I am going to go ahead and get started because it is 2 o'clock and we have a lot to cover in only an hour, which is a really short period of time. I want to start out by saying thank you all so much for joining the CEE listening session today, and thanks in particular to Rebecca Lilquist, Lorena Lopez, Emma Van Orden, and Ross Honeycutt, who organized a department-wide petition regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion that I received last week. As a petition was signed by many faculty, students, staff, and alumni. This certainly indicates that increasing diversity, improving equity, and creating a more inclusive environment is important to the CE community. However, as the petition also suggests, there is still much to do and we need to move a lot more quickly than we have been. Shortly after receiving the petition, I sent a preliminary response to Rebecca, Laura, and Ross, and indicated they could pass it on. I'm not sure if all of you have seen that. My preliminary response included a promise to work with others in the CE community to develop a more comprehensive response to the request. And then as I started working on that and talking with other people, mute themselves. If everybody could mute themselves, that would be great. In talking with others about sort of my response to this, I heard many ideas about how to increase in diversity and achieve equity, as well as that there were many other ideas out there being discussed by different groups of people within the community. Thus, the idea of this listening session was born as a first step in the process to just provide additional input and enable people to talk about and present their thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ultimately, we want to make progress on these goals because it will provide a much better place to learn and work for CEE. So the objective of today's listening session is for all of us to listen. I don't plan on responding directly to the community petition or even responding to the comments that I hear. And I would ask that you do the same. This is really just to allow everybody to voice their ideas. Certainly if you want some clarification, that makes sense, but please keep it, let's not have long discussions. We don't have a lot of time. There will be time in the future for small group discussions and for more listening sessions, but today is really about listening and collecting information.
Laura, can I interrupt really quick? And there's a chat that folks are surprised that it's being recorded, commenting that it hasn't been previously shared that it was going to be recorded.
The reason to record it is to make sure that we capture all of the information. There will be a, I actually have a couple, let me go through my comments that I want to make specifically, and I'll come back to that at the very end, okay? So the format for today is to, yes? I don't know if that was another question. The format for today is for all of us to respond to a series of questions that'll be posed in Poll Everywhere. Those responses are all anonymous, and we'll be able to see those responses on the screen in real time. So that provides an anonymous feedback on all these questions. What we will do following some of the questions is pause for a second and I'll ask for feedback on those. If you want to comment on, gosh, I'm really surprised that I don't see whatever, or I'm surprised that not everybody said this. Great comment. Please put in the chat, just start with comment, C-O-M-M-E-N-T, and that will, Ted Hansen will then see people who are asking to comment and invite them to unmute themselves and provide a 30-second to 1-minute statement. We won't have a lot of time, so try and keep it short. And then I would ask that you re-mute yourself. If you want to comment and you want to be even more anonymous than that, you can send your comment to chat your comment to Ted Hansen and he will voice it for you. If you want to provide a comment beyond that, there will be we're setting up a Google survey that will be accessible from our CEE diversity webpage, and you can provide input to that Google form, and then it gets anonymously reported back in an Excel spreadsheet. So while this is being recorded, there are lots of ways that you can provide anonymous feedback back into the system. So I feel like that provides sufficient anonymity that everybody should be able to voice their opinions and concerns and not have to worry about something being directly attributed to them through the recording. Is there any, if there's somebody who's particularly still concerned about it, maybe you can put something into the chat. Will there be a time when we do get a response, one of those smaller sessions and listening sessions? My expectation is that those probably won't occur until the fall, just because so many of our undergraduate students and are not on campus in the Seattle area. Admittedly, everything's remote to some extent, but the summer there will certainly be action along those lines, but I think we're more likely to wait until classes resume in the fall to organize some of those sessions. Okay. I will lead on to the next person, and I'm already 2 minutes behind schedule. CEE has invested time, energy in increasing diversity and equity recently, though we haven't done a good job of communicating it out. In fall 2018, we established the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Climate Committee that is chaired by Professor Joe Wortman and includes faculty, staff, and students. I'm going to pass the ball to Joe, who's going to spend less than 5 minutes talking about what that committee has been doing in the last couple of years.
Okay, thanks, Laura. I do want to just, before I give a very brief history of I'm just going to, for brevity, say DEIC committee. Before giving that history, I do want to thank all of the students and others friends of the university and faculty and so forth, who brought the petition forward. I really appreciate that level of engagement, and I think I really hope that we can build on this momentum and to carry this through in the coming years. As Laura mentioned, we're the newest committee in the department. We were formed in September 2018. We were really born out of the department retreat that was held, I think, in the summer of 2018. There were a number of faculty who had an interest in diversity-related issues, myself included, among other members of the committee. And we brought that forward, and Laura authorized us as a committee in September. As a new committee, we spent last year, so we've been together for 2 academic years. We spent the first academic year really kind of trying to understand our operational plan, as whether we would involve students and what capacity we would involve students, what would be the issues. And we opted to begin as a starting point with a 2014 climate survey that was done for our department. And that had a number of specific actions related to undergraduate and graduate instruction, and also staff and faculty issues. And in some, there were about 40 specific recommendations. And that document is 60 pages, it's single space, it's very comprehensive. And what we did in the first year was to try to identify the top priority items to begin working on. And those, we made those recommendations to the department at the end of our first academic year. And those pertain to recruitment at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, training for both faculty and staff, and then separately training for students. And then third, what I kind of generically termed community building, student integration, and mentoring, which was about trying to make a more inclusive setting in the department. During the current academic year that has just, I guess, just in the process of concluding right now, we set to work on implementing some of these, but we also addressed some other issues that came up and also became pressing in this year. One of those was concerns that were expressed during the tenure and promotion process with bias in teaching evaluations. And so we worked on that. We developed a policy document for the university. We began planning a listening session, much as what we're having right now, and that was originally slated for the spring. Obviously, that didn't happen in light of the COVID pandemic, but that was in the plans for this particular year. And then I also want to highlight, I think, a major initiative that Jessica Ray has led, which was in submitting a proposal to the UW Seed Grant Program for Diversity, and her proposal is titled Diversity and Inclusion in Practice, Addressing Ethics in Diversity into Civil Engineering Curriculum. And basically it's about incorporating these themes into coursework. All right, it's 2:11. I'm gonna wrap up here. We also worked on a number of smaller initiatives, but I wanted to kind of give a summary of the larger things that we've done.
But from that perspective, it probably would make sense for us to send out more regularly an update on what that committee is doing. And that's certainly something that will come up as we answer some of these questions. I think before we get started on the polling and more discussion, I will open it up to Rebecca, Lauren, Emma, and Ross to say a few words.
Hi, just to correct you, my name is Lorena, not Lauren.
Lorena.
And first off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone that's been involved in the petition. This is a very important thing, and I'm really excited. There's so much attention towards it. I would also like to thank the Lois Folks Alliance for Minority Participation and STEM Director, June Harrison. She's also on this Zoom call. I would also like to thank Magdalena Fonseca. She's the Ethnic Director. She's also on this call. So I'll get to it. I'm Lorena Lopez, and I've been in the CEE department for 2 years. So in the 2 years that I've been in the department, I have seen a huge lack of diversity. In my class, the 2020 class alone, there are a handful of Latinx students and no Black students. Now, to understand the impact that diversity and inclusion has, I want to go ahead and tell you a story about the first time I read a Mexican novel. Now, within the first few pages of reading this book, I was already crying because this was the first time I saw myself represented. It was the first time I saw a character that looked like me, that spoke like me, or that had the same culture as me. And that was the first time I saw myself represented in society in general. Now imagine the impact would be as a student in a classroom setting. Imagine how that student would feel if they had a professor who they could share their experiences with, or even a classmate. Now, imagine how much that student would grow, how much that student would learn, and how much more involved they would be in the department itself. The lack of diversity within civil engineering has excluded me from finding the community within civil engineering. It has hindered my growth and has hindered a lot of the growth of many underrepresented minorities within the department and UW. This issue that we're discussing right now is not just an issue for specific people, it's an issue for everyone. Everyone has to do better. We have to do better in order to fix this problem. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Lorena. I think that's been the biggest thing for us in drafting this first document is just that this is everyone's problem and we all need to look at how we can be better. And so on Monday, for all the students listening in, we're going to host sort of a student Zoom call. And we've gotten a ton of feedback from everyone since we put this out, and we really want to kind of organize that and bring some more people into the fold who've given us some great feedback. And so we're going to do that this Monday. I'll send you guys some follow-up emails after that. But additionally, following our group meeting on Monday, we really want to continue this conversation over the summer with the department, Laura and Joe. And so I'm hoping that you guys are able to continue this in smaller meeting settings and sort of develop some plans before we get into the fall. That's all I really want to commit to right now.
I'm assuming that it's back to me.
I really like that guy. Fuck, I hope I...
Thank you very much. That was an excellent way to start off this series of polling questions. And so let's go ahead and do that. So Karen, can you send us the first question, which is really just about identifying who's participating today?
Yeah, so I just posted the poll everywhere link in the chat box. Does everyone see that? You just,
Yes.
okay, great. So I will go ahead and share my screen here.
Karen, on my
Yes.
end, oh, there it is. Log in. Got it.
Okay, so this is the first slide of the survey. So, okay, stuff is already coming through. So sounds like we all know how to use this. Thank you.
Karen, do you know how many people we are?
$130.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to pause a minute because it actually took me a minute or two to get in. Lorena and Ross, I don't mean to diminish what either of you said by not having a more complete response to your statements. I want to make sure that we can accomplish the poll that we've put together and get some of this data. And so I'm in the mode of listening and collecting information rather than responding. So it looks like we're getting close to our total number, and it's awesome to see that we are almost equally represented in the meeting today. And starting as I mean to go on, does anybody have any additional, there's some alumni. Okay, so then we will assume that they are choosing a graduate or undergraduate or postdoc, depending on what their most recent role in the department was. How's that? Is there anybody who's having problems logging in? Are those alumni who can't log in with SSO?
Yeah, they're alumni, probably the ones that don't have net IDs active probably can't log in.
So if you are somebody who is having a hard time logging in, I am really sorry. Use the chat and use the chat to TED to answer the open questions, the open chat or the chat to TED to answer the open-ended questions. And if you want to provide feedback to some of these polls, write it in an email, and if you're happy to email it to me, please do so. If you want to do it more anonymously, put it down in an email or a text or a document right now, and then submit it to the Google form. Okay, I think we're going to move on. As I said, I think this is awesome that we are basically equally distributed between all these different areas. And thank you to the 2 postdocs who are participating. How about the next question, Karen? So this is just asking how you're feeling today. You've got up to 3 answers. If you have thoughts while you're watching this, please go ahead and voice them. I will say that it's wonderful to see that there are so many people who are hopeful and engaged. And I appreciate that there are lots of people who are frustrated. I have to admit that I have my own frustrations in this process. It seems like I wish that it was easier to find the resources that I want to have. June, can you elaborate on your comment?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. This is a first experience for me, so I appreciate the input. I've been here going on 38 years and served with the College of Engineering in several different roles. And my concern for students is, excuse me, my phone. Those are robocalls that we get all day. I apologize for it, but my concern for students is that it's important for the departments to understand the empathy that the need that students have and present empathy by at least hearing these students and also engaging them in the solution. So I appreciate being able to support Lorena today and the other students by giving them the support that they need and the courage that they need to take this moment to be heard. And I am concerned that the department really hear their heartbeat, because it is very difficult to be a person of color and to be only 1 or 2 in the environment. I'm a graduate from the University of Washington in the master's program and in the doctoral program. And I know what it feels like to be the one and only and not be engaged in group activities because people are reluctant to reach out and invite me, and then I have to invite myself. So I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to voice these concerns.
Laura, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Thank you for voicing your concerns, June. I appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to our next question.
Okay.
So this is just looking at what the current environment is. And as I look at this, I am indifferent is probably not the best response there or best title, but clearly intended to be something between I agree and I disagree. I think that's probably giving us a good idea of where we are. It could be worse, but it could certainly be a whole heck of a lot better. Okay, why don't we move on to the next one? So this is our first open-ended question. You can respond as many times as you like, and all of these responses should show up on the screen. Nobody has any comments? Okay.
Again, if people want to provide verbal comments as well as what they've written here, just make a note in the chat and then I'll call on you.
Does anybody see something that seems to be popping up again and again that is really meaningful to them?
The lack of diversity seems to be popping up over and over again.
Yeah.
The absence, which is very meaningful because you can't really discriminate against someone when there's no one there of that color or that sexuality, you know what I mean? So I think the biggest issue is that there is no one within the department that's POC or LGBTQ or, you know what I mean, minority.
I want to piggyback off of Lorena too. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. I'm been outside. Thank you, Ted. I think it's not just that there's a lack of diversity, there's also an ignoring. And the passing, how do I phrase this? It's ignoring that there's a lack of diversity in the student population for like Black, there's BIPOC, LGBTQ, first generation, as well as there is no, the diversity of the faculty and the diversity of the experience in the faculty to have empathy or to even be able to see that there is problems in the student population or be able to reach out to the student population or talk to them or bring up other types of methods or bring up other types of studies. I think that the list of the things goes on, and it's hard when the faculty also does not have the leadership or say that they do not have the tools to be able to support these students. I'm wondering what that looks like, what the interaction looks like at the director level and the faculty level to be able to move this along.
I have a lot of things that I could say to respond to that, but I'm not, I'm going to try not to do that right now because we decided that that's not what this meeting is about. This meeting is really just about me listening. So I'm not going to answer that, not because it's not an excellent question and there aren't a lot of ways, and I would really love to discuss it more, but just that was not the purpose of this meeting. I'm finding that very difficult.
Thank you for acknowledging, just planting a seed. We can come back to it later.
Yeah, as I said, I feel like I want to respond, but I'm going to let this continue to be listening. So we didn't really actually plan for the idea of there being hundreds of responses. Just keep going. If people continue to respond to this, Karen, do you have any idea what happens? I guess once we move on to the next one, does this close?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna wait until we get to 105 or so responses. Does anybody else want to comment on what they're seeing?
I have a question. I've seen the Direct to College program written up here. It's appeared more than once. I'm wondering if someone who wrote that can say a little bit more about what that means.
Thanks, Julian. That occurred to me as well.
I can talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, you know, obviously it hasn't been around for long enough for us to really know a whole lot about what the impacts of the Direct to College program have been on including more minority students. But that's something that's come up in our discussions about the petition that we were, when we were sort of formulating that was, you know, does the Direct to College program discriminate against minority students who maybe didn't have as many resources in high school to, you know, have the best grades or even club experiences to be able to get into engineering programs directly out of high school. Whereas if they had gone to college for a few years and had the opportunities to, you know, maybe bring their grades up or get involved in more activities and show that they're a good fit for engineering in other ways. Like we didn't feel like it was giving students enough of a fighting chance, basically, and it could potentially lead to more issues with inclusion and diversity in engineering, specifically UW.
And I can piggyback on that on the issue of outreach primarily. Yeah, I know if the Direct to College program existed when I was entering UW, I would not be graduating from the civil degree simply because I came from a community where I ended up bringing that I didn't have the the awareness of civil engineering as a profession. So in that way, it also discriminates against people who have not had the same networks.
Thanks, that's really helpful. I think we will go on to the next question. Again, if you've got responses to this, keep them coming until she moves it. But there will be some other opportunities to provide additional feedback, and we can put out a list of the questions that are up there as well. Yes, we do need another one of these listening sessions, agreed. Why don't you go to the next one, Karen?
All right.
So I think that it is really important for many of us to think about how we've been complicit in upholding racist or oppressive structures in CEE. It's going to take, there are a lot of us that are white on this call today, and yes, not speaking up sooner. So I think there's some things that we need to think about what we're doing and what we need to do better and in the future. One thing that I'm not seeing is people asking for, like, not seeking out training or not learning more. Does it feel like those resources are available, or that that's an issue?
Can you ask that again, Laura?
I guess I don't see more people saying that they've not been actively educating themselves. It seems like there's a lot of inaction on sort of not calling people out, et cetera, but not a lot of statements about not seeking out education, not understanding more. Does that make sense?
I think not speaking out relates to that, because most people don't speak out unless they're fully confident about something.
Good point.
That's me, it's my opinion.
And also adding to that, it's just been like, you know, there are things that have been happening that we know are wrong. And we're sort of just at such a baseline level right now of like, you know, there are things that are happening within our department that, you know, aren't even like those sort of more complex issues that also need to be taken care of, but that there are just, you know, blatant racist comments being made or sexist comments being made that just we've been a little bit too complacent about in responding to and speaking out about.
I have a comment from somebody, which is that they felt like they had to go to other departments for such resources.
To piggyback off of what Ted is saying, or Lorena, did you have something that you wanted to say? I can cede my time to you.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, just in light of everything going on in Seattle and the nation, I've been seeking out resources for my group, and it's just to educate ourselves. Like, I'm a white graduate student and I want to educate myself more so I feel more comfortable talking about this topic, because I can never fully understand other people's experiences and like how they experience bias especially within academia. And it's been very difficult to find any sort of resource coming from UW as a whole. Like, I've reached out to like multiple institutions, but it just doesn't seem like that there's any unified resource available for people that want to educate themselves. And so like, I don't think that it's fully a civil engineering thing. I think that it's like a university level thing about knowing like where these resources are and how to incorporate them either into groups or into curriculum.
I have another comment from somebody, which is, I want to add that the lack of speaking out is in part due to the culture created by CEE that is not supportive of speaking out. And I'll just add personally, so this is not someone else's comment, this is my own comment. You asked Laura if I feel like training opportunities have been provided, and I don't. I think the college and the university should do a better job at providing these training opportunities to staff and faculty, and not providing those things has had an impact on the entire culture. Sam, you have a comment? The mic.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. I just wanted to piggyback off that a little bit and just say that for those of you who don't know, the graduate students get a ton of emails from me, but I'm one of the stewards for the civil engineering department in the graduate student and postdoc union, UAW 4121. In our last round of bargaining with the university, we tried to get specifically discrimination and harassment trainings funded across all of UW. That's not the whole training enchilada, as it were, but it's a part of it. And UW fought us tooth and nail. Not the civil department, but UW administration fought us tooth and nail to get that funding. And any support from faculty, if the faculty agree that this is a problem, then any support from faculty the next time we go to the bargaining table can make that a stronger likelihood of succeeding and getting even further than we got this last time.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate hearing that. Okay, next question. Thank you all for all of your responses. This is fabulous. I'm sorry that we didn't set aside more time to allow for more responses. I think maybe many of us have answered this as part of the previous question, but this will give us some specifics. Those certainly seems pretty consistent with what we were seeing previously. Why don't we go ahead and go on to the next question? As I said, it seems pretty consistent with what we were seeing previously. So this will go out to the people who are engaged and hopeful. This gives us some opportunities to think about what we can do. So I've seen a couple of people talk about setting up more of these listening sessions, opportunities for students to speak out. I think that's probably opportunities for faculty, staff, and students to speak out. Are there, in writing your comments, is this kind of session really nice because it's anonymous and you can post a bunch of comments about specific questions? Do you think that there are if you have ideas on other ways that that people could speak out and help those of us that are privileged, white, to better understand and to help affect change? What are some other ways that we can do that?
So this is great to see all the comments. I wonder if it would also be helpful to have another session that specifically addresses actions and accountability around the content that we're seeing, because it's great to air out our feelings and frustrations, but I know, especially as engineers, we're very action detailed and oriented. So I think that might be needed next.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. And maybe that is the best way for us to move forward, is to compile this and really take some of those next steps so that we have, and certainly that's some of what the diversity committee has been doing, is here's some priorities in terms of moving forward, and now let's start accomplishing those. So why don't we move on to the next question. We've got a couple more questions to go, and then that might give us a little bit of opportunity for a closing statement. So what do we want? What does it look like? When it says more available resources for what?
What do you think a welcoming, inclusive, equitable, and diverse CEE department would look like? Okay.
Are you asking me?
Oh, sorry. No, I was asking someone I'm sitting with. I didn't realize I wasn't on mute.
I put my comments in. It takes a surprisingly long time for your response to show up. Anybody have any thoughts on what they're seeing? Okay, why don't we move on to the next question? So I think this is really along the lines of what Jessica said of what are some specific actions that we should take? What are specific things that as a student or a faculty member or staff member that you can do or that you think others should do to accomplish our goals? What would a training activity for faculty, staff, or students look like? What would you want to learn?
Trainings on implicit bias. Trainings on dismantling systemic racism within large bureaucracies with a history of racism.
I wanted to see something on managing microaggression and sort of managing challenging situations. Okay, why don't we go on to the next question? I think we've got lots of responses here. So there's been a lot of talk about a CE Student Advisory Committee, and I think that is an excellent idea. And I guess the question becomes sort of what would that committee look like? What role would they play? How do they collaborate and integrate with faculty and staff to achieve our goals? Does anybody want to, let's see, call out a particular comment that they think is important, or is there something that you're seeing that you think should be emphasized? Are we missing something in this question about the CE Student Advisory Committee?
I'm seeing the comment come up a lot that the students should be compensated for the work in serving on an advisory committee like this. And I was sitting in a different meeting about this same topic last week in a different department. And that was something that a couple of the students brought up, was that minority students or students from, lower income backgrounds probably don't have the time to be serving on these kinds of committees usually, because they need to be working so that they can pay their tuition and their housing. So I think that's a really interesting point that people are bringing up.
Yeah.
A comment sent to me is the idea of a CEE Student Advisory Committee is fine and dandy. Will this actually work in practice? Will the faculty and staff actually listen to the students? And just so everyone knows, I've been reading the things that have been sent privately to me, and when it's posted for everyone, I don't read it. But if you want me to read it, just say that or send it to me directly. You're also welcome to say it yourself if you'd like.
Okay, why don't we leave it at that? I think that's really helpful. There's some great ideas and some great information there. Transparency. Okay.
Another comment.
Yes, go ahead, Ted.
This is a comment from somebody. Minority students are also asked disproportionately frequently to help in meetings, visitation events, etc.
I want to give a comment on that real quick.
Yeah.
Asking minority students about their experiences is it's good just because you get to actually see that it affects someone badly, instead of like you get to take a step back and see like, oh, it affects this person, like I didn't realize that. But it's also, we have to be careful because like when you ask a minority student to share their experiences, you're also asking them to relive that trauma. You're asking them to experience that all over again, and you don't know what that could have. That could be negatively impact them, or it could be a downhill spiral. It's a very thin line that's very difficult to cross, and I'm learning on how to balance it, because constantly reliving these traumas is not mentally good for you, but it has to be discussed because this is an issue that no one wants to discuss.
A couple comments from some folks. First one is, there is no chance that faculty have the skills to actually listen, as well-meaning as they may be. Quote, discomfort training is not really a thing. Second comment, I've heard of a student advisory board before as a student, and when introduced to the idea, faculty themselves felt afraid that it was a token idea. I want to make sure a board like this has power and initiatives that make it worthwhile and heard at the table.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I've heard of a student advisory board before as a student, and when introduced to the idea, faculty themselves felt afraid that it was a token idea. I want to make sure a board like this has power and initiatives that make it worthwhile and heard at the table.
Thanks.
Another comment from somebody, students should not be re-traumatized through such trainings.
Can I add a comment, Ted?
Yes, please.
I think on Lorena's point too, I think in the thought of creating a student advisory board, I want to put it on everyone's mind that asking students to advise and re-experience trauma, to advise white faculty, white professors or white staff members is, it takes a big mental toll and is energetically it's a big energetic expenditure. It is also not the responsibility of students, of BIPOC students and LGBTQ to have to represent their needs and to have to ask for them over and over again. And also that if that is to be someone's job to do that, please establish that to be someone's job and to continually work on this, as racial activism is a lifelong work.
Thank you. Another comment, this is not BIPOC people's responsibility to address and fix. If you are white and privileged, this is your own issue to recognize and take action on. If you do not feel the urge to address these topics from your position of privilege, something is wrong with your ethics. We're not the ones who need to form committees. Please start to serve us. Another comment, create a diverse student leadership advisory team that provides ongoing feedback to leadership, provide training for staff and students to become facilitators for intergroup dialogue. Stephen, I'm gonna turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that a date be put on a calendar for when responses to the original petition will be made, and a follow-up meeting maybe soon, say within a month or something, to either continue this discussion or after the all the feedback from this discussion has been looked over to see like what the actual plans are going to be, just so that the momentum's maintained. Yeah, just ask that we plan that today now, so we don't lose that momentum.
I don't want to lose the momentum. We can certainly, when I wrote back to the student leaders in response to the initial petition, I said I'd get them a more formal response within 2 weeks. So I still intend to do that. I'm certainly open to the idea of having another meeting in, I'm going to say Black Lives Matter, because somebody keeps asking me to say that. And yes, Black Lives Matter. This situation over the last several weeks has, month, I don't know how long it's been, has been horrific, and and I am personally, this is all personal, it's producing change, and that can't in any way, shape, or form take away from how horrible the recent events have been, but it is producing change. And part of that change is going to improve the situation for Blacks, but it is also an opportunity to improve the change for others who are minorities, for other minority groups. And that's my personal statement on it.
I have some more comments I want to get to.
I'm going to go back to finishing up what I was saying previously. I will respond within the 2-week period to the student petition. We can set up a time to meet to figure out, I don't know exactly what that meeting would look like, whether, I assume it would be more of a smaller group of people and more of a discussion, but we will set something up, and I will get in touch with the students that sent me the petition and probably use that that group of people to engage students more broadly. We can figure something out. I don't want to commit to what the day is, because I need to be involved, some student leaders need to be involved, some faculty need to be involved, and trying to organize everybody on the fly is probably not going to work. So we will try and send something out so we can make sure that we can find a period when people that need to be there are available to be there, but we'll do something this summer. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Ted, comments?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get through all the comments. Thank you. After this meeting soon, what follow-up support is in place for students and staff and faculty who are re-traumatized real time by listening to this meeting? Assuming we have so many challenges in this department on top of more likely to have COVID-19 trauma, such as recently losing family members and other known impacts. Another comment, I served on a student advisory board as an undergraduate at another institution. When we provided recommendations to the department faculty, they told the committee they heard us and then didn't make any real change. If this committee is going to exist, it must have real power. Another comment, we should not and cannot wait until fall for further discussions. Alumni are here now, local, and are active in this discussion. Laura, the next discussion needs to happen within the next 2 weeks. Another comment, it would be helpful for a committee to have clear guidelines on what is expected of majority group students and minority group students. We hear that white people should sit and listen so as not to decenter POC experiences, but also that POC shouldn't be expected to do the work of dismantling racism. Both of these make sense, but they seem contradicted for many majority students who want to be allies, but feel paralyzed by the idea of giving disrespect no matter what they do. It's not about white fragility per se, but ignorance of how best to show respect and be helpful. Training would be helpful on this score. And that's, Lorena, I'd like to turn the floor over to you.
I just want to make a quick comment about the student advisory board. I think it is a good idea, but if we do that, I also think we should use the resources that UW already has. Like we have the Office of Minority Affairs, and we specifically have June right here. She's the director of the Roy Starks Alliance for Minority Participation in STEM. So I feel like she's a good resource to use, and she's also, she could be in the advisory board, or she could directly help the department at Laura, or you could ask the Ethnic Culture Center for help. Magdalena is also the ECC director. She's here in this Zoom call meeting. She can be in the advisory board or directly help you in the department. But like UW has already, it hasn't done much, but it's done some things over the year because of BSU. And those resources that we have, we should use them. Like it seems that the department wants to create something entirely new. And I agree, if you want to do that, that's fine. But also we should merge that with what we already have in place to make it stronger.
Thank you.
Thanks for those suggestions. We have found it challenging to identify the right people on campus to help us with various tasks or various activities. And it seems like it's very distributed across campus. It's very challenging to figure out exactly who we need to be talking to get the resources and the support that we want. But it's wonderful to have people here participating today. That certainly makes it easier to connect with them in the future. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? We're not surprisingly a few minutes over.
I want to say something, and I want to kind of add a disclaimer up front that I'm not speaking for all Black people, people of color. I wanted to address the comment about when to include people of color in these conversations about how to increase your awareness, how to talk about these issues, particularly if you're white and wanting to better yourself or, you know, increase your knowledge about historic and systemic racism. I've had a lot of these conversations with white friends and white colleagues, and there are definitely moments when I feel like I can have those conversations and moments when I can't. And recently there's been a lot of check-ins, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And this particular moment is very acute. So I'm taking a step back because I don't want to then rehash either verbally or in an email or a text response how I'm feeling in this moment. But there are people of color and Black people who will happily have these conversations. And you can have those if you have a close Black friend or a close friend who's a person of color and they feel open enough with you to have those conversations. If you don't have a close Black friend or person of color, I would say check that situation. I can't say enough about cross-cultural and cross-racial friendships and partnerships. I learn a lot from them, and I hope everyone has something like that. So that's a platform you can use to increase your knowledge about these issues. But it's really a willingness on the Black person of color to have the conversations. It shouldn't be requested. It should be willingly given.
I want to, this is Joe Wortman. I want to say that Black Lives Matter, and it's unacceptable that the composition of our community does not reflect the composition of the United States. And I want to thank everyone for the really helpful feedback that's been shared in this meeting. And thank you, Laura, for organizing this.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, I think that we are coming to or we should close since we're certainly over time. I want to thank you all for participating and sharing your thoughts and being hopefully completely genuine and open. It certainly seems that way from the comments that have been posted. So I am going to thank you in advance for continuing the conversation. It certainly seems like there is energy and the desire to do so. And it will take a fair bit of effort on all of our parts to accomplish something significant, but there's an enormous amount of energy and commitment and desire to do so. So I am hopeful that we will get there. And yes, in particular, thank you to our students who really started this off and got the momentum going. And I look forward to continuing in the future.
One question that came up in the comments is, will the log of comments, poll everywhere responses be shared? So we will post those to our diversity website. Is that right, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay, so the poll everywhere responses will be saved and shared.
Okay, well, thank you all. And I guess one last thing. Congratulations. It has been an incredibly challenging quarter for everyone, and we've completed it, and we've taken some great steps forward. So not only thank you, but congratulations.